Um, Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Maj. I'm part of the Solidarity Economy, the Solidarity Economy Association. Um, so we, this is the third of a 6 series of webinars that we have called Conversations with Gamechangers. The aim of these webinars are to share experiences and tactics from groups across continents who are using the solidarity economy, building up from the grassroots for a better life and dignity in their respective societies. And this specific webinar, we're really happy and honored to have Grassroots Liberation joining us from Nairobi, Kenya. So just a few, before I go into the introductions, just a few points. So there will be interpretation available. If you've requested interpretation in any of the languages, any of the 5 languages offered, you can connect to it from the globe icon on the bottom right. If you've selected English, then you just select English on that icon. Also, we will try to speak slowly and leave spaces in order to allow the interpreters to be able to do their interpretation effectively, since it's a tiring job. So also, as my colleague Rory mentioned, please feel free to use the chat function to introduce yourself, tell us where you're joining from, what context, and to also ask any questions during the webinar. We'll be collecting all the questions and then asking them particularly in the question and answer section. So just a quick introduction about who we are. So the Solidarity Economy Association is a small cooperative based in the UK. We work on many projects that are trying to build the solidarity economy from below. We see the solidarity economy as this very old system of organizing of humans before capitalist systems became the main ways of structuring our economies and our societies. So we have the understanding that it has been there for a really long time and it's still going on and being done all over the world, although it might not be called solidarity economy per se. So our role is to also share tools and strategies that people and communities have been using to resist and support their own communities in different ways. Now, moving on to our super interesting speakers today, joining us from Grassroots Liberation Movement. So the first one, Waringa Wahome, is a political organizer in Mathare, Nairobi, Kenya. She's a social justice and human rights lawyer. She is a member of the Mathare Social Justice Center, the treasurer of the Grassroots Liberation Movement, and the vice chairperson of the Young Communist League. We also have Brian Matenge, who is a political organizer in Githurai, Nairobi, Kenya. He is a writer and in political topics. His writings and videos have been published in the Walter Rodney Foundation, Groundings Journal, Daraja Press, Africa as a Country, and New Frame. He is also a member of the Githurai Social Justice Center, the political education coordinator of the Grassroots Liberation Movement, and the general secretary of the Young Communist League. Sorry. And our third speaker today is Gasheke Gashihi, who is a community organizer in Mathare, Nairobi, Kenya. He is a writer who has published his writings and videos in Rope Journal, Daraja Press, Africa as a Country. He is the coordinator of the Mathare Social Justice Center and also coordinator for the Grassroots Liberation Movement. He's also secretary of mass mobilization at the Communist Party of Kenya and a member of the Social Justice Center working group. So we feel really, really excited and honored to have the 3 of you here. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to hearing more about you, about the movement. So without any further ado, would you guys want to start by, oh wait, actually, sorry. I forgot to just talk about how we'll structure the event. Sorry about that. So we'll start with with the presentation, just telling us what your story is in terms of how it started, the context in which you're organizing. Then at quarter to 4 UK time, so in about 30 minutes from now, we'll have a 10-minute break, mainly to give the interpreters a break, but also for everyone to take a little rest. Then 10 minutes later, we'll do a short series of questions around strategy for about 20 minutes. And then we'll have another 10-minute break and then move on to questions and answers from participants. So would you guys want to start by telling us a bit about yourselves, how you started, your story, your context?
Okay, greetings, comrades. I hope you can hear me. You're good. Yeah, thank you very much. Very inspiring. And the song was from Mozambique during the liberation independence. So in memory of Eduardo Mudlen, and it's my colleague Warenga who chose that song in memory of the struggle of women and for food, for healthcare. So we remember the memory of Eduardo Mudlen, who was a leader of the Mozambique people, and he's the one who inspired the song. And at the end of the song, they speak about Eduardo Mudlen, and his inspiration is about solidarity economy. First of all, my name is Gasheke Gashehe. I coordinate Madare Social Justice Center, and I'm part of the Grassroots Liberation movement. It's a great time we meet again around the solidarity economy. During this economic crisis that we are facing, especially here in East Africa, we have a major problem with hunger, a lot of crisis with the environment. So Madare Social Justice Center is where I coordinate. It is formed 2015, and we started this because of the crisis we are facing with the NGOization. So Madare Social Justice Center is a community-based organization. Members came together to form this center as a part of building a collective political power and economy from below. First of all, we started documenting cases of human rights violations because that's what will affect many people. And for us to start a community-based organization, we had first of all to fight the right to organize, and it was very difficult that time because a lot of extrajudicial killing and forced disappearance and torture of young people in Madare. As you know, when there is a major crisis of poverty and a crisis of economy, young people face a lot of problems. So there's a lot of criminalization in the former settlement. So that's how we started in 2015. And now we can speak, we have 21 social justice centers in Nairobi, which are autonomous. And that's why we are very inspired by the democratic confederence idea of Rojava, that we can create autonomous people's power, where they have their political power, economy. So we have 21 social justice centers at the moment in Nairobi, which is part of the grassroots liberation movement. And you know, our colleague Jeff also, we have been grounding with him here in Nairobi. So Madare social justice centers have almost 30 members who they contribute to support the center. We have different campaigns, right to water, campaign on extrajudicial killing, campaign on ecological justice campaign that is linked up with the grassroots liberation movement. And this is where we are anchoring the idea of a solidarity economy, where we can have a joint collective farming, idea of sharing resources that we have. And that's part of my background as a member of Madare Social Justice Center. And we have been there in the last 15 years. I have shared some of my interview in the WhatsApp. I hope we can share more with our audience. And it's very inspiring that we are creating this path together. And I'm sure there is my colleague called Roy who work with the Solidarity Economy Association in UK. Surprisingly, this is the first time now we are looking back after 5 good years. How inspiring that we link up again now.
Yes, greetings, comrades. Of course, I think that Gasheke has given a very good introduction of the meeting. And before we get to the depth of the conversation, I like mentioned, my name is Warenga Wahome. I'm also a member of Madara Social Justice Center. They are a coordinated legal empowerment network, which I think we shall delve more in when we get into the conversation. But I'm looking very much forward to our discussions. Yes.
Well, I think I will not add anything because my comrades here have come in very well on how we started, and basically that's our inspiration. But I will talk more in the second question. Just to say that we have one more comrade will be joining us, who is called Kinodia. Yeah, but he'll be just joining us in the conversation, and he'll pick up anything that he can come. And just to recognize that we have Jeff Miley, who has played a major contribution in the journey of the grassroots liberation among us. Thank you.
Thank you for that, comrades. So would you be able to tell us a bit more about the current context in the environments where you are organizing? Like the, sorry, yeah, the sort of context in the settlements, the types of the most significant issues being faced, and like the types of projects you are doing in relation to that?
Yeah, well, my comrade Gasheke had analyzed, how the condition is historically changing, from colonialism, and now we are at the era of neoliberalism. And the situation in Kenya is just like it is, hopelessness, especially now that we are coming from elections. You can tell that, there is a spread, there is a spread state of hopelessness within the informal settlements, within these people who currently, who are in the middle of the class strata. So you find that healthcare, we have broken systems of healthcare. Our education system is in crisis. We have, we have a state of high levels of unemployment. And so you get that every day, even within these centers and within the grassroots liberation movement, we are documenting a lot of cases on police brutality, especially on enforced disappearances and extrajudicial executions. But generally looking, you can see that there is just that state of hopelessness that is spread around. So in relation to that, I think the activities that we have been engaged in before and now is one, the very minimal that every day we are monitoring and stepping up, just stepping up to be a vanguard of the community, to be to be that head, that offers solutions in the community. We have organized some, we have organized both legally and when legal means fail, we have organized, we have hit the streets and organized different mass actions. We have also participated in bridging solutions of these problems in our community, like organizing ecological justice hubs. We have organized parks around our neighborhoods to just try and build a popular power within the grassroots.
And you mentioned ecological justice hubs.
Yes.
What are there any particular ecological justice issues that are most prevalent in your context that the hubs are helping with, or?
Yes, like in a Mandara Social Justice Center, because of the challenges that we are facing with the police brutality and extrajudicial killings. We have a campaign called Ecological Justice Campaign. And outside our community center, we have created a people's park where we cleaned up garbage and we planted trees. But we create these trees, not only just planted trees for greening the park or creating an environment where people live. We plant this tree in the memory of victims of state violence. And then from there, we build a consciousness with the community and show them the history of state violence. As you know, the Kenya Kenya has a very historical path with the police state and violence since it's a former British colony, and it has remained a very, very violent. So these trees we plant is in memory of victims of extrajudicial killing, as we create a path for sustainable economy around creating of the collective small park and farming, which is the path that we are going on with the solidarity economy that will help us to be able to sustain our struggle within the community. I hope I have answered that question well, comrade.
Yeah, thank you.
And just to come in, you find that the struggle in the urban areas is quite an ecological. We suffer a lot of ecological justice questions living in the urban areas, because one, we have the question on profit. You find that even housing, the landlords try to reap off some profits using from housing, a matter that should be free. So you find that we have a lot of sewers, open sewers, which have now, as we speak, caused a myriad of chronic conditions. We find that in the shanties and the informal settlements, we have high cases of people suffering from conditions like cancer, conditions like typhoid and such. So in the urban areas particularly, and in the urban areas, you find that there is also a lot of land grabbing. So we have very minimal green spaces, and so we take it as an ecological question, because we don't have much, we don't have these spaces where people can talk, people can speak, the air is polluted, we get that corporates are just polluting everywhere. Our air is, our air is also toxic. And of course, the very minute that we cannot take the water that drains, that drains through our rivers. So it becomes also a very big problem, which we are still continuing to address.
Yeah, and I think to add on that is that the social justice centers generally are organized differently. And as Comrade Gasheke has mentioned, is that ecological justice in itself forms a pillar of campaign. So in different sections of where the social justice centers are placed. Take for example, Gasheke has talked about Kasarani, Brian has talked about Githurai. And of course, there are different areas like another called Kasarani, where young people are organized, and particularly in the same way that the Grassroots Liberation movement takes the path of community-based organizations. And of course, most of these social justice movements themselves are organized, legally registered as community-based organizations. So these community-based organizations themselves, it takes a path where the young people can find their own means of sustenance by converting most of these garbage areas into green spaces that people can organize around. And of course, it gives a home or homage somewhat, where people can communicate and have a safe environment to speak about different issues or political questions that need to be addressed.
Yeah, so this is two struggles. First, we are struggling to building a civic space for community organizing, and the same claiming these spaces for creating a sustainable economy that can support the movement in the future. These spaces, they become site of struggle that's permanent owned by community-based organization and social justice movement.
Thank you for that. I think my colleague Joe wanted to ask a question.
Hello, greetings. It's really nice to have you here with us in the third webinar. This is Joe in the Solidarity Economy Association. We've met before. Yeah, I wondered if you could help people, sitting at home watching this or with friends around the world to understand like how life is in the informal settlements where you're organizing. Because maybe people imagine different things, or maybe it's difficult for people to imagine like the context and the lives of people. So like what kind of reality are people living and struggling with? Like what is the history of the informal settlements? What are the problems there? What is it like a typical life like?
Thank you very much, Joe. This is very powerful. And I think it's very important to know poverty is violence. And where there is a poverty, there is a crime. And where there is crime, there's drugs. And where there is all this, there's major human rights violations. So it's very, very difficult to organize in a situation of informal settlement. And you saw in Nairobi, 70% of people in Nairobi live in the informal settlement, where there's no access to water, there's no housing, there's a major violence, especially against youth and women. So it's very difficult for people should know. And I'm sure it's not only the Kenya, but also this is a big problem for that world and global South. Although now it's affecting developing countries when these crises of capitalism. So it's very, very difficult. And that's why we are saying, before we start with the economic sustainability of organizing people, first of all, we start with the doing campaign against systematic extrajudicial killings and human rights violation by the police. Because what the police and the state is doing is to cleanse the people, is to stop people to organizing, is criminalizing the youth so that they don't organize against the poverty and hopelessness. And that's why we have formed this social justice center, first of all, to create a space for convening a social movement within our communities. Then after that, we build up to the next level of a model of sustainable cooperative economy in the future. But also it's very, very difficult because every day we are facing systematic cases of extrajudicial killing. So we document them, we refer them to the relevant authority. As a comrade Brian has talked about, we do a lot of protest marches. Every year we have annual Sabasaba March for Our Life. Even we linked our march with the Black Lives Matter in the US before. And that's why we are saying that this international solidarity is very critical, because it will put pressure to our government to stop what we call cleansing of the youth and provide an alternative way of livelihoods. Because every time young people are criminalized, and that's the major crisis that we're facing now. But our audience should know it's very, very difficult to do community organizing in an environment where there is a lot of poverty and hopelessness, because people will not be able to come to the meeting. Also doing political education, our comrades also have been facing a lot of challenges. And that's why these parks are very important spaces to do political education, because that's where youth are comfortable to come there. And the Ecological Justice Campaign is providing a new path for us to invite youth around the river, the parks that we have rehabilitated, so that we can use those spaces as a site of organizing. Although inviting youth in the church, in the social institution is very difficult, because they don't trust those institutions, especially religious institutions, because they have lost hope with them. They are not voice for social justice and human rights. That's why we're saying that Ecological Justice Campaign, especially planting trees, has given us an opportunity to build a movement that has a two-way track, sustainable and also challenging the democratic space to organize.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead, Naj.
Going off what you mentioned, could you tell us a bit more about the parts around political education? Just letting us know a bit more, yeah, why in this context is particularly important, the sort of challenges that you guys have been facing.
Well, thank you very much, comrade. One is to say that all these struggles, and where we are coming from, based on the history of where we are coming from, it is important that first, it was very important that we understood about our history. So it was very important for us to go through our history so that we can know where we are going. And looking at history, all these struggles, from slavery, to feudalism, to colonialism, and now in neoliberalism, all of them are political questions. And looking at them very clearly, we found out that there is that depoliticization of human rights, and the human rights question, especially in Kenya, is suspendedly. People look at it suspendedly. So first of all, we defined, and we borrow from history and struggles that have come before us. And borrowing from that, Che Guevara advises us that the first duty of a revolutionary is to be educated. And we found out that all of us are doing a revolutionary action. Be it very minimal, and be it it doesn't matter where you come from or where you are doing it from. All of you first have to be educated, understand your history, and then understand your where you're going. So after some while, there was also that crisis about the NGOism of social movements. And just to break away and to detach from the NGO question, we found out that education, especially political education, is very important, in understanding neoliberalism and how the system works. And of course, we are also the students of Walter Rodney, who tells us that the first duty of a revolutionary is, a revolutionary must understand the system and work towards its overthrow. So in overthrowing the system or preparing for that overhaul, we found out that political education is an important segment of our process. And just one last more thing is that in our organizations, and my Dr. Jeff Miley can even give more inputs, is that you find out that there exists various factions, various ideological factions based on the ideological differences. So we found out that the only way we can get from this contradiction is through having a standardized political program to drive us to the next stages. So I think that is why we thought that political education is very important, and it is a primary question.
Yes, and I think to add to that is that there's a lot of, like Comrade Gasheki has mentioned, is that there's a lot of hopelessness, particularly in formal settlements. And this hopelessness that is coming as a consequence of poverty, and organizing around what Frantz Fanon calls the wretched of the earth, is that they're very detached or depoliticized from the actual situations and connecting them with, I didn't use quote unquote what ails them. And, political education in itself is what reawakens this wretched of the earth to claim what belongs to them. And of course, through these sessions of political education conducted, to expose these systemic forms of oppression, we'll take the path of, taking up sites of struggle and then organizing around those political questions. So, for example, we are speaking about social justice. Most particularly because they cannot, coming from informal settlements who cannot connect why there is no water, for example, in their societies, why there is no food, or why we're struggling with education, or why healthcare has become such a huge concern, and poor people are dying from lack of healthcare. Connecting that with the political question becomes very difficult for them. And of course, taking up these organizations together and coming up with a whole formulation of within the social justice movement, and of course we're also members of the Grassroots Liberation movement, coming up with a form of political thinkers or political writers who can connect these struggles with that form of particular systemic oppression. So now the organization itself has the social justice movement itself also has a connection with the Organic Intellectual Network, which is a network of different political organizers who are also, let's say, advanced in terms of political understanding of neoliberal conditions and the nature of capitalism, who organize around the same issues, and also conduct political education sessions within the community, the community through organized social justice center movements, and also part of the Grassroots Liberation.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think in the context of Africa, political education feels so important, because even the educational systems we've inherited are still very, very colonial, just like the bureaucracies. So I think it's very interesting that you guys are framing it around a more, just a more grassroots approach, and in a lineage of all the thinkers from Africa and its diaspora that kind of gave us so much material to redefine education as a form of anti-colonial resistance itself. So yeah. I think you also mentioned your comrade Jeff, who is here. I don't know if you'd like to introduce yourself, Jeff, and if you had anything to add.
Jeff.
Yes, I'm happy to see the conversation going. Happy to see my comrades, even though it be virtually. I think this question of political education is crucial in the context of the informal settlements in Nairobi. One of the things that the grassroots liberation movement was born out of an internationalist spirit, thoroughgoing international spirit, but also trying to do things at the grassroots. So when I was in Kenya between February and April this year, the Grassroots Liberation Movement, we organized a series of seminars, which we did in the communities themselves, and we did 4 seminars. We did one on Rasta and resistance, which really brought together a lot of the elements, very lively elements of an ever more politicized Rastafarian movement, bringing them together with people from the Youth Communist League to talk about the relationship between Rastafarianism and resistance. That was the first one. We did a second seminar on women's liberation in the 21st century, really thinking about, we brought in women from the Kurdish freedom movement to talk about their approach, to talk with women from Nairobi about their approach to self-determination and the crucial role that women play. We had a seminar on social ecology as a revolutionary paradigm, where we talked a lot again about the relationship between social ecology and the struggle for social justice, and we did it in a space that is a kind of liberated ecological space in Githurai. A place called Simplicity. And then we did a 4th seminar on the legacy of Walter Rodney. Walter Rodney, who was, I think, really central for understanding the need for real grassroots education. So the education shouldn't be done as like a kind of a political speech, haranguing people with political speeches, but actually going to the grassroots and engaging in dialogue with the grassroots. So we came with a thoroughgoing internationalism, but also really wanting to be at the grassroots. And we're now mobilizing to build on that further, moving towards an Arusha Declaration for the 21st century, in which we're going to follow up on those seminars as well. And in the intellectual network that Gacheke and Brian Waringa are all involved in as well, be working on those 4 themes, to follow up on those 4 themes. And we're hoping to pull off a big conference that brings grassroots organizations from all over Africa to Arusha to declare an Arusha Declaration for the 21st century.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Also, would you want to introduce yourselves?
Oh, sure. Sorry. Sure. My name is Jeff Miley. I live here in England. I teach at Cambridge University. I teach a lecture of political sociology at Cambridge University. And I first came in contact with the Kurdish freedom movement in 2014 when I was invited to participate in an academics delegation to Rojava. So from there, I got since then I've been very involved in the Kurdish freedom movement. And from 2018, I've been involved in dialogue with the people in the Mathari Social Justice Center, trying to think about the ways in which there can be affinities between the Kurdish model of democratic confederalism and organizing for self-determination, and the kind of really valiant work that they're doing at the grassroots in the informal settlements in Nairobi. So I've been involved in that since 2018. And then 2022, I was also involved in coming back to help them sort of launch this grassroots liberation movement, at least the internationalist wing of this grassroots liberation movement, which again, I think is both trying to work at the grassroots, beneath what a lot of the NGOs get to actually, at the same time, beyond the nation state, so organizing internationalists. And so this is why this kind of forum that you guys are doing, we have such an affinity with what you guys are trying to do, and so much respect for what you guys are doing.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And just before we close off this section, I just had one last question in terms of the sort of members of Grassroots Liberation Movement. do you guys mainly focus on youth, or trying to have a bit of an intergenerational dialogue, so including children as well, or elders? Like how has it been structured mainly?
I think to introduce it, that of course it brings together different grassroots movements and community-based sort of movements by either young people or women. For example, what our comrade Jeff has just introduced on the different pillars that we took up. We have the pillars, one that addresses the women question, the other one that addresses the youth question, the other one that addresses the political education aspect, the other one that addresses the concept itself of solidarity economy, just cooperatives, or emancipation from NGOism itself. And of course, the different aspects, different young people that are organized and now bringing it to a political aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have organized with the Women in Social Justice Center, which is a feminist organization within Social Justice Center. The Rastafarian movement that we did a seminar with them, the Rastafarian movement. Also, and that seminar Jeff is talking about the women 21st century economy. So it is across the board. But majority of young people of Africa population is young people. The majority of Kenyans are young people, jobless, with a lot of hopelessness. So the target is the huge population of the franchise young people in Kenya.
Actually, the structures of, if you look closely at the structures that the Grassroots Liberation has borrowed, it has borrowed heavily from the democratic centralist structure of the Kurdish movement, of the Kurdish freedom movement. So you see, we incorporate, we incorporate the three-line approach of the ecological justice, where where in ecological justice we get to interact with the youth, young people, the middle-aged people, and such. We have also we have also an aspect that Jeff is talking about on women, the women in the 21st century, where we talk about issues of women emancipation, as Gasheke has said, and we also have a wing on our democratic confederalism, and we have different aspects where we have incorporated, and we work with these grassroots organizations there, like the Rastafari community, and especially the minority communities, and that is why we chose to settle on the Rastafari community, because they have a lot of they have a lot of similarities with the Kurdish people, the struggles against state repression and such.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I think it's time for our first 10-minute break. We'll be playing a short video, in the meantime. But yeah, thank you so much, comrades, for this introductory part. And I'm really looking forward to the next parts of the conversation. Again, for people attending, if you have any questions, feel free to either put them in the chat or in the particular Q&A part. And yeah, we'll see you all in 10 minutes from now.
Welcome back, everybody. If you have any questions as we're going along for the comrades at Grassroots Liberation, please write them in the chat, so we'll collect them, and then at the end we can ask all the questions together.
Wait, sorry, did you guys say something? Cool, so we'll go ahead. We'll continue our discussion through another sort of series of questions. One in relation to the context in which you're organizing within the settlements. What sort of pre-existing ways did members of the community have, without necessarily considering its activism, but sort of ways of community support that you guys were able to build on when creating Grassroots Liberation.
Hello, comrade, can you we didn't get clear the question.
Okay. So the question was in relation to the sort of pre-existing conditions in the settlements. So what ways did members of the community already have in terms of organizing themselves to meet their needs, even though not calling it activism, but sort of mechanisms of community support that you guys were able to build on when you created Grassroots Liberation? Does that make sense?
Yeah, do you want to go first?
Okay. Well, I think this goes more with what we had discussed initially. First, there are some issues within the community that needs a vanguard, that needs people to guide the process of emancipating. I am looking at examples, and I'm seeing there is those struggles that will need a protracted process. That will need consultations, that will need social movements come together and address the issue. But there are issues that are emerging. There are issues that are an emergency. And among these issues, we have seen members of the community revolt around different areas within the informal settlements where the social justice centers are placed. For instance, we had members protest against the evictions in Mukuru. And informal settlements. We have seen members organize themselves in Madare to oppose police brutality. After a young man is gunned down, you see different members of the community come, they organize demonstrations to these agencies. We have seen this, there are these questions that the community is organizing themselves against. As the Grassroots Liberation Movement, we are planning to consolidate these, and the centers give us, the centers model, how the centers are organized, give us a good model to create people's communes. And we think that these people's communes, connected to an organization like the social justice movement or any other social movement, will go a long way in bridging the solutions for the communities themselves. But we have had communities that are organizing themselves around the food question. There are some comrades in Kisumu who are organizing a cooperative around rural organizing, and how they control their own food. We have seen a model. We are borrowing from a model in South Africa, a movement in South Africa that organizes themselves around the housing question. We have just tried attempts, but based on the conditions that the Kenyan economy is exposed to, we are just trying to see initially communities have risen against oppression. They have organized themselves, held mass action, and even organized themselves around these questions like food, housing, and such.
Yeah, and I say existing resilience of the people, as you know, the history of a neoliberal economic crisis in the last 30 years has exposed people from knowing how to organize themselves, individual struggles as the leaders in the community. So this has made us to pre-existing condition is that you find people have resilience. Now they just only need a spark that can create consciousness to know when they come together, and they start building a collective power from below, it can start bringing a solution. So I think the existing condition is that social contacts, people doing community work before, community organizing, people organizing around water and sanitation, social institutions that are not political, people doing self-help work, and then we politicize it and we show them that it is a bigger question. It's not about charity. It is a bigger question for struggle for the people. So I think that's environment has created an ecosystem that around us to create a path for building a social justice movement.
Mm-hmm.
also, you know, comrades, the pre-existing conditions, you see, we used to have individuals taking charge in organizing the community. And anytime the community will organize itself, then it will be a spontaneous reaction, yeah? Just reaction to the different things. Let's say a youth has been killed in the informal sector, then that is the only time we come together. And you know, we need an individual now who will help the community, who will now spark the community to organize. But you see, that is not sustained organizing. And now you see, you know, through grassroots liberation and also through our different organizing in the community, then we're able to sustain this resistance, yeah? Through political education now, at least now we understand the political question, and now we are also able to build on the objective factors, yeah? And now the community can be able to sustain this resistance away now from the individualism that was there before, because it is very easy for the state again to deal with individuals, yeah? Comrades will tell you that we've lost before, we've lost individuals who used to defend the community, they disappear. But once we have now a lot of community members aware of their rights and aware of so much, and now taking lead in organizing the community, and also in organizing themselves, then it is also very difficult for the state again to crack down on all the community members, because now we have women, we have men, we have the young people, and now it is the entire community taking up now this challenge. Yeah. Okay. So again, I am Kinuthia Ndungu. I had not introduced myself. I am Kinuthia Ndungu. I'm a member of the Grassroots Liberation. I'm also a member of Kasarani Social Justice Center. Kasarani Social Justice is the youngest social justice center, and I'm also a member of the Young Communist League, the Communist Party of Kenya, in the Young Communist League in charge of ideology, and also in the social justice movement. I'm in charge of political education in my center. I'm also a member of the Organic Intellectuals Networks, and I've also published just a number of articles on the Raja Press, and also Ukombozi Library, and also Walter Rodney Foundation, with the Walter Rodney Foundation, yeah.
Thank you, nice meeting you, comrade. And thank you for those insights. So I guess around what you guys were saying is more taking the pre-existing community structures that would usually emerge from a reactive context and trying to make them more rooted in consistency.
Can I say something? Can I say something on that, on this front? I think with respect to a bit of a deeper pre-existing structure, it's not an accident that the main road that runs through Mathare, where the Mathare Social Justice Center was founded, is called Mau Mau Road. There is a pre-existing tradition of a land and freedom movement that is still very very conscious at the level of political consciousness in the ghettos. So people, figures like Dedan Kimathi have a popularity still. So there's a memory that of a resistance movement, and a sense that resistance movement was betrayed by the history of the post-colonial trajectory. So I think so there's the immediate kind of level of resilience, and then there's the deeper memories that are there, and that the grandparents give to the children, and the children can recognize what a mural who Dedan Kimathi is, for example.
Yeah, thank you so much for that super important point. I think that's and this is one thing that's been echoed even in other webinars as well, when we're thinking of the solidarity economy. It's all these forms of organizing are not new. They're part of a lineage of resistance in sort of any space that we're in, a lineage of resistance that even through different mechanisms of colonialism that try to erase it, it's like imprinted in the memory and the DNA of people within those spaces. So it's about how do we revive it in different ways and reclaim that memory as well. I think in relation to to everything that you guys mentioned, and following up on a different point, another sort of mechanism of more recent colonization particularly in Africa as well, like many other regions, is the world of international development and NGOization of social movements, of struggles for justice and dignity that usually belongs to the grassroots. I was wondering if you could give us more insights in terms of how you guys view NGOization and the sort of different ways in which, as Grassroots Liberation, you try to challenge that in your own context.
Comrades, that's a very fundamental question. Is NGOization is a big problem. In the last 30 years, with the neoliberal economy, there's a lot of the politicization of social movement by the NGO, and this has really affected very many people. It's very important to know that Kenya is a part of this crisis of NGOs, and this has really affected our people, and we are trying to, as we said, we have an organic intellectual network that has continued to organize around this question of NGOization. It's not different like Latin America, it's the same thing. From 1990 to now, there has been a major crisis of the politicization of the social movement. Organic intellectual networks has organized against this question seminars. Soon we will be publishing a book about NGO discourse. The book is written by Professor Shivji, and many of young people have written in their reflections on how every day, like community-based organization, we are confronting this problem of NGO. There's a lot of charity, like one slum in Kibera, there are thousands of NGO doing charity work. In Mathare, a lot of NGO do charity work. They don't ask the fundamental question why people are poor, but they would want to give medicine, water, sanitary pads, but they never challenge the crisis of political economy that we are facing. Is a big problem, and by my colleagues will add on this. And the way we are confronting it is through political education and organizing a solidarity economy. And we're saying that the way to struggle against NGOizations, to fight charity, and also to politicize some of their programs that they are sharing with us. But majorly, we have done a major seminar, and we'll be launching a book on NGO discourse on the role of NGO in East Africa, and what it has done to undermine the growth of social justice movement.
So even importantly on that is that even as the organic intellectuals, you've heard of organic intellectuals, and some of us are members of the organic intellectuals, and not just publishing, because our intention is not just to publish, but to ensure that community we organize in know about the crisis that is ongoing. So Prof had talked about the different forums and seminars that we had when he was here. And this is what, even as the publication comes out, because community organizers have been writing on NGO discourse, and they are writing from their experience, because we organize in the informal sector, and there is a lot of NGOs and activities and diluting our struggle here. And not just so, after writing, we go back to the community and organize forums. Yeah, we go to the sports where the youth chill. Yeah, we go to the sports where the youth chill, and now we engage on this material that is published, because most of them have not had access to education. Yeah, so it's very hard for them to comprehend this text that we write. And when you talk about neoliberalism and all this, then it becomes very difficult for them. So we have to go organize informal forums within where they are coming, within their communities, and now discuss this to make them understand in their own language. We use Sheng. Sheng is our local language. Now to make them understand the crisis that is going on, and therefore it becomes now even easy for them to understand these issues.
But of course, just to add on what my comrades have said, it is in the nature of NGOs to fragment different political struggles within our communities. And of course, when social movements are attached to NGOs, what happens is that even the community itself become depoliticized. And like Gasheke has mentioned, is that the easiest way to fight it, not the easiest per se, but to use the word easy way to fight it, is political education, which I think my comrade Kinodi has expounded on. And of course, even looking at the nature of which the grassroots liberation movement itself is trying to defeat these methods of charity is, for example, how we organize our activities. It's different groups and what they can provide. So, for example, we had the seminar that we held, for example, on ecological justice. Where we have the park itself being not being charged, because there's already an existing park by the Simplicity Group. Also is a member of the Grassroots Liberation Movement, which itself now provides a base where people can organize and talk about these issues. And then if there are people that can cook, people cook. If you can provide something, you provide something. So depending on what Karl Marx says, that from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. So I think those are the methods under which the Grassroots Liberation Movement itself organizes and tries to defeat charity through the NGO system.
Yeah, that is very well, Marge. And as you can see, is you find that it's a very fundamental question, and even within our circles, it's a question that it's building a lot of debate. Every day is building a lot of debate, because in a world where neoliberalism is very deeply rooted, you find that and from what Gasheke is saying, from borrowing from Mr. Shivji, NGOs were born from the belly of neoliberalism. So you find that NGOs are inherently attached to the neoliberal system and the free market system. But as I was saying, and let me say something, that there has been a debate ongoing about dependency. And I think one thing with dependency is that it doesn't have dignity. And as a social justice movement and the grassroots liberation movement, what we crave for is dignity for our people. So when the NGOs make us dependent, they even rip off our dignity in organizing. So one is that NGOs are not very far from the free market economy, and a detachment from NGOs means detachment from imperialism. And as we fight imperialism, we have to be very wary about the NGO question. And even looking from history, you find that our Kenya Land and Freedom Army, those who came before us, were determined to establish a self-determined structure, such that the community provided food for the fighters. Those fighters, if you had skills in designing a gun, you design a gun for the Kenya Land and Freedom Fighters. So that is that is a model that we crave for. And as my comrade Warenga is saying, Karl Marx expresses it that it is each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs, and that is generally the model of the grassroots liberation, bringing all these social movements together, and each can bring what the skills, the knowledge, the material support that they have, so that advocacy can be easy. But one last more thing is to mention that there has also been a role of progressive NGOs in the Kenyan setup and in the Kenyan economy. So we cannot in the Kenyan the struggle for economic freedom. So I think as we pursue the question of NGOs in Kenya, we need to be particular on because there are some that have contributed to the liberation struggle. But the thing is that remains clear is that they are a result of the neoliberal economy.
Did you want to say something, Jeff? Or
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, comrades, for such interesting insights. And I think this, as you were saying, the debates around NGOization are often very tricky because sometimes the very sort of mechanisms of dependency that are in the background are very hard to see on the front. And so how we navigate those discussions as well, knowing that these types of institutions emerged in a very particular post-colonial context of, okay, how can we maintain dependency, but in different manners. But yeah, thank you so much for your insights. I think those debates are definitely worth continuing to have, especially, as you said, Brian, especially knowing that many organizations, even within that sector, are trying to detach from that legacy and align more with struggles for autonomy. So yeah.
I guess that there is something that I would want to add.
Yeah.
Just from an internationalist perspective, as having gone and spent time at the grassroots, it's very difficult to avoid a relationship that is somehow neo-colonial in nature. Even with the best of internationalist intentions, the relationship that you establish with people takes on very easily a form that looks neo-colonial, or looks like an NGO, like you become your own little mini NGO. I think that we need to distinguish between NGOization and what I would say leveraging our privilege. So those of us who come from the first world and are privileged in the first world, when we engage in grassroots mobilization in these sorts of places, I think we need to conceptualize it.
I think you've frozen. Can everyone still hear him, or is he frozen for everyone?
No.
I think he was talking about
Protesting against police violence. Excuse me?
Sorry, you
Yes,
froze. Can you just repeat the last point?
So I say leveraging our privilege, rather than checking our privilege, which we should always check our privilege, but we should also try to leverage our privilege. For example, when it comes to speaking out against police violence, things that can be very dangerous for people at the grassroots there to speak about, maybe take a stance and try to take a stance in ways that create space for the community. So really think about ways that we can be strategic and tactical in using our privileges in ways that don't reestablish some kind of neo-colonial NGO kind of look, but we always have to be reflective about it because it's very difficult to avoid. And we have to think about how can we distinguish internationalism from NGOism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gacheki, you were going to say something in relation to that?
No, I just think that's very powerful, Jeff. That's very inspiring. That we have to leverage on our privileges and understand what is the question of international solidarity and NGOization. Mm-hmm. And I think being a professor from Cambridge University and coming to stay with the people in the community, helping them to articulate their issues, writing about these reflections, being there in the job, I think this is a very powerful way of democratizing your privilege, or making sure that you're using your privileges to articulate and amplify the struggle of the people. I think it's a path of Walter Rodney and Frantz Fanon, and this is a path that's saying that how do we also create the university that we are in, the spaces of privilege that you are in, as also a site of struggle in broadening the whole question of the people's struggle. Powerful, yeah. Jeff. I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for those points. And also, I guess, as taking as a starting point everyone's positionality as well. So we're going to go into, we're just going to watch a short video now to get a sense of the environments that we're talking about, and then we'll be back with more questions from the audience.
Hip Hop City, one love.
One love.
I give thanks, Dandora 32, Jar Driver.
I'm Moses Wanjau, a human rights activist from Mathare Social Justice and Grassroots Liberation, Matigari Center. Down in Nairobi Eastlands, police brutality is very high because the people doesn't take the initiative of civic education on human rights so serious on the ground. That's why the police take the advantage, because the youth don't know their rights, and then they victimize people so much.
Inasemekanaga voice mingi zikishikana zinakuwa powerful, so hiyo ndio spirit mimi naweza ikuwe mtaani, safer city, yani to fight poverty, to fight crime, to fight corruption, to fight bad mind, vitu zote ambazo zina bring darkness kwa society.
Hey, unity kwenye society, big around the free bila boundary, usimwage down italeta more misery. We don't want no gun turn for this century.
Lico youth in the family, we used to play around this place.
Past of Mathare have been so brutal of police violence and killings. We would like it to change for the next generation to come up on a view that they are not victims, because we have been used to this life of being victim and victim. We like it to end and have a new life on the kids who are growing. We too need a better future for them, so we urge on more police reform. Killing is so much.
Greetings in the mighty name of Emperor Majesty Haile Selassie I. Ja, Rastafari.
Tell you any man can do. Some of them busy, Babylon busy, but they just can't study mind, cause some degree, cause some are hard working. Tell you my activities are becoming in no hurry, hurry, I got no blessing, just take it easy.
Representing for Mathare Radio, we are the Grassroots Liberation. We liberate people musically, artistically, spiritually.
Kuna members kadhaa ni ma-activist, wana voice kwa wale voiceless, na pia kuna ma-dance. Yani in short ni talent, ni hub ya talent. Ukichekea hapa nyuma kuna art ya kuchora, so hii art ya kuchora pia imekuwa ni kama bado voice ya ma-artist wa drawing, pia wana communicate na hiyo vako.
I signed a permanent contract, work on the most touch the task, be it a winter or summer. I know, Jawax must be that. I do, Jawax, I tell you any man can do. Jawax, Rasta man I do.
Kila ghetto ama kila mtaa kuna kuwaga na ma divisions tofauti, unapata kuna base fulani, so through kampa moja na aim moja ambayo aim yenyewe ni art, imefanya tukakuwa ni kama sasa tuko kitu moja, tuko umbrella moja, so na feel hiyo ni achievement moja big time sana, juu tunaweza fikia na base zote virahisi, yani hiyo network imekuwa ni solid yani.
Take my soul, take them. Jalongwe, though the battle might seem so big, Jah is fighting for we. See the shadows and dark edges. Take my soul, take them. Jalongwe.
We do have Walifa music, going around, because since the ancient times, Mathare used to be paper house.
African heritage in bondage, hard to trace human race.
To this generation, the shanties took over, and the population, grew overwhelmingly. And right about now, Walipa gunshot, and the music come to change this place. Not only music, Walipa art and craft,
At least kuna watoi sahi, as we speak, wame wameji-engage kwa stories za art, wamesahau mambo mob, stories za drugs, wameachana na stories za kuadmire life ya crime. So inakuwa wanaona kumbe kuna pia kitu special about hii art ambayo ni love ina bring kwa society, ina inspire wasee, wana live positive, na hii art pia tunaipromote through music ambayo ndio imekuwa ni kama pillar
here in Mathare Valley. Try to share with you over there, Camp Bridge University.
Homeborn slave. I in my backyard today. Me I tell you that I am a slave. I am a homeborn slave. Homeborn slave. I in my mama land I say. Me I tell you that I am a slave. I am a homeborn slave. Born slave. Homeborn slave. I'm a homeborn slave.
I hope everyone enjoyed the very insightful video. So now, if you guys are okay with it, we're going to move on to a few questions from participants. So want to start with from Bob, who asked, can you say a little more about your work on the economic aspects opposing the oppression of poverty?
Very difficult, especially when you have a history of a neo-colonial state, neo-colonial economy. It's continued to undermine even the little effort you make for a joint cooperative, even if it is doing farming or doing sharing of the things that we make. Like during COVID-19, people did sunny water, washing water, hard washing soap, but it's not sustainable. So it is something that we are struggling with for a lot of time. So it's both way, a political question and economic question. But I think we need to learn something from what Democratic Confederacy and Rajoba people have done, and many other cooperative movements that are shaping up in areas where they have a solidarity economy. That's something that also we need to learn, because ours also is the major struggle is also to create a powerful social justice movement, but we're still struggling with creating an economy that is able to sustain the movement.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you for that reply. Our next question is from Dan, who asked, I was wondering about the wider civil society / activist context they're working in. Who are their allies? Where are divisions? Are there any religious groups, unions, NGOs that they work with? Yeah, and in relation to that question, Emma also asked if you have any relationships between urban and rural struggles.
Well, I think the first question is, and thanks Dan and Emma for raising these important questions. I think one to say is that we have formed allyship, and we have mapped out allies, and and the Grassroots Liberation is one of the models that has not been tried yet. At least we have an outline of the social justice movement. So from the social justice movement and the Grassroots Liberation movement, you get that we have just from the grassroots as grassroots organizations. The first people in our contacts are our communities. And if you look at closely at this model, you'll find that these social justice centers are established within the grassroots, and that's the reason of the Grassroots Liberation. So those are our first allies, and I think in the long run is that it's a question of tactic, because based on the different struggles that that we have that we have launched, and the different offensives that we have organized, we have we have different allies for different groups, for different programs. So like in the struggle for constitutional reform, you find that the religious groups were involved. In the struggle against, in the struggle against police brutality, we have, we have some non-governmental organizations, some agencies that are involved in the process. So I think the first question comes, we take it as a question of tactic based on the conditions of the Kenyan society. And we have even formed allyship before with various political outfits, political organizations, political parties, and the Grassroots Liberation is a model, that can analyze the different formations of allyship that we build. So yeah, we have established some relationships with the religious people, with some of the NGOs, with the church, with the community elders, and even to some extent, even institutions and schools.
A follow-up question about the rural and urban. This is a very critical question, and it will be more sustainable for a social justice movement when it's based in the rural area, because there's a peasant land there. It's not commodified like in urban life. There's no, the economy is not very sharp like in a urban community. We have some social justice center in the rural areas in the Western Kenya, and also in the a bit in central. But this is something that we are going to build more strength and strengthen as we create a path for solidarity economy. Having a community farms in rural areas, and also having a community market within the urban. Then we have a relationship that create a sustainable relationship between the urban life, urban struggle, and the rural area. This is something that we are broadening as also Mathare Social Justice Center, because we have realized it's very difficult to sustain urban struggle without being linked up with the strong peasant and rural areas. It's the challenge in the rural area, the political education is very limited, and also you find majority of the people who have formal education, they are based in the urban area. But with the crisis of the economy and neoliberal globalization that's shaping up, there is a representation of the people. So I think this also will create a path for us to build a strong link with the rural areas. And Comrade Jeff know that we have been trying to build a commune within some areas in the rural setup.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I think to add on what Comrade Gasheke has said is that of course there are particular differences or particular similarities as well within the methods of organizing in urban areas and also in rural areas. And of course, in urban areas having, it's the conditions of capitalism that have brought people, from the rural areas all the way to the urban centers, to try and find sustenance for themselves. So of course, there are particular similarities that we can find when it comes to organizing even the rural communities. And of course, borrowing from, the basics of the social justice movement as well before, as the working group itself formed from different urban areas, from the social justice centers within the urban areas and the social justice centers within the rural areas, which are able to consolidate the different, the different struggles and gains that are being made in terms of, organizing the rural areas. And of course, as as capitalism continually reinvents itself, even the rural areas themselves are also becoming that we have, we have also, rural workers, who are also having a similar form of oppression with the urban workers. So of course, there are a lot of similarities that come along with the, the urban and rural struggles. So organizing them within, the network of the social justice centers working group, of course, gives, a roadmap of sorts of establishing a particular path of, finding the allyship between, the peasants and the workers in the urban areas.
Thank you for that.
I think there is a question that is asking about, is there any way that we could show our international solidarity that would be most useful to you? Yes, that's a very powerful question, I think, and this part of the webinar is a part of building a platform for international solidarity. And also, I think sharing of our documents, and also we have a fundraising, online fundraising that we created with Comrade Jeff. I think we can share with you, see whether we can do a continue fundraising. But I think also sharing about the crisis of capitalism. How is Solidarity Economy Association? How are we doing joint publications and showing the linkage between the international financial institutions that are undermining the people's struggles? I think that's something that we can think about, because that's very critical. But at the moment, this one is also important, having this kind of webinar and also creating awareness across the globe. But we have a fundraising that we created with the Comrade Jeff when he was here, and I hope it's still ongoing.
Yeah, we've just, Rory has just attached to has just copied in the chat the link to the fundraiser.
Great. So I think even we can apart as an addition of sharing materials, we can also think of how we organize such forums and debate, so that, because the essence of international solidarity will be to connect our struggles. So we could even have international, we can even have international collective international campaigns. Like we have started with the Kurdish people. So I think we can connect our struggles and see how, because they will be more amplified, if we approach them at an international capacity.
Absolutely. Another question that we had, well, actually, since there are just a few people left in the call, if anyone wants to ask their question directly, I think Dan, you had one. Do you want me to ask it, or you can unmute yourself and ask it directly to the comments here?
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm Nora. I'm just using my partner's Zoom. Oh, I would forget to change the name if I change it. Anyway, thank you so much. That this event has been amazing, really interesting and really inspiring. I'm really glad I was able to join. My question was, from the what you were saying about marks, about from each according to their ability to each according to their needs. I was wondering, in your practice, like within your community, like organizing, do you find that power relations develop and can sort of polarize between people with more ability and people with more need? And if so, like, how do you deal with this in your groups?
Of course, it's in the nature of capitalism for there to exist class struggle. So it is an existing struggle, of course, even within our society, that there are of course going to be people with more, and of course going to be people with less, as long as capitalism exists. But in our nature of organizing, we've met such kind of societies, but we try to beat them in all essence as possible. Yes.
Yeah, and thanks, comrade. I was about to call you Dan, but thanks for the correction. I think that is a very important question, which is a philosophical question, because looking at it deeply, you find that it is inherent, like my comrade Warenga is saying, it is inherent in the nature of capitalism that there must be that economic imbalance. There must be some people, and that contradiction, we face it daily. Because you get that most of us are organizing based in the different informal settlements. So you get that there is even that contradiction of just seeing someone who is who is a ladder away from you as as someone who has wealth. or such. So I think it's a great, it's a deep conversation that we should have, because in fact our people need to understand the class difference and the stratification of the different classes, which is a contradiction that is still ongoing. In fact, we have people living in the informal settlements because there are some wealthy people who do not want to, who are amassing and assuming wealth every day, accumulating land every day, primitive accumulation, which started from right away from colonialism. So there has been that the class difference, and actually that is what gives us motivation to go. Lastly, let me say that Jeff had actually articulated that question about leveraging privilege, which I think we borrow from Cabral when he tells us about class suicide, that those who have those who have wealth, or those who have privilege, must in fact must get ways to to get this wealth to support the struggle, and moving away from individualism, that it is a collective struggle, that they must subordinate what they have to help the struggle, to help the liberation cause. So I think that is the inputs that I can give on the class differences. But my comrade my comrade Kinodia wants to come in then. Yeah, or we can have Jeff.
Yeah, I can say something on this as well. I think this is, it is a really important philosophical question. Fanon makes an important distinction when he says that it's different. Political education is different from coming in and haranguing people with political speeches. Political education is about helping them sort of being the midwife to the birth of critical thinking. And so I think that we should think of our roles as political activists, those of us who understand ourselves as activists, as trying to initiate a birth of critical consciousness amongst the masses. So those of us who have maybe more ability in a certain sense to understand the situation, to spread that capacity, to sort of be capacity building, so to speak, and that is an attempt to sort of get the people who you're mobilizing to go push beyond yourself. And that's a difficult thing to do. It's easier said than done, but I think Fanon points in a certain direction, which is the right direction. I also think obviously Paulo Freire and the whole legacy of tradition of the pedagogy of the oppressed. I think that's the way to sort of think about. And I think these sorts of webinars are one way of attempting to organize political education a little bit differently. If we can do these sorts of things in person as well, I think it's very important, because there's something that gets, there's something that is gained, obviously. We're speaking with people in Nairobi, we're doing this internationally, but there's obviously always something lost when we don't have the human contact.
Comrade, I think that is a powerful that's a powerful injection, and just to add on what Jeff is saying about privilege, is that there are only two ways out of it. Either because talking about oppression, we say that just as the society develops and progresses, one day we shall get to freedom or to equity. So eventually oppression will end. So when we get there, and before we get there, they just have two options. The privileged, that is, one, either to commit the class suicide that Jeff is talking about, or secondly, the masses, out of their own ways, will appropriate them, in revolutionary violence. So I think, I think it's up to them to, to decide which path to follow. And I think, the comrade who asked that question, is very, has experiences that we don't have, because the conditions in Kenya are very different from those in England. I don't know how they approach the question of organizing and the question of privilege, but that is how we think it, here in Kenya.
I think Brian, you had mentioned that one of your comrades wanted to add something before Jeff spoke.
Yeah. Knuthia.
No, I think it says it has been addressed.
Okay. The second question, well, the other question, Joe, if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask it. I think. Or you want me to ask it? Okay, I don't know if Joe's internet or computer is acting up, but it was a question particularly for Waringa. And the question is, what is the situation for women, and are there autonomous forms of organizing for women in the context? I think you mentioned them in passing, but if you could tell us a bit more about it.
Yes, of course, we still stand with the position that there is no particular women's question that needs to be addressed, and that the primacy before we speak about the gender question is of the question of class struggle. But at the same time, there are particular questions that there are particular, I don't want to use the word circumstances, but there are particular issues that particularly address the women question, because when we speak about patriarchy, which is quite inherent in capitalism, is that patriarchy is also something that has also been one avenue or site that we can organize around, because even within the social justice movement, there is also the organization of women in social justice centers, which is quite taking up advocacy on different issues relating to the oppression of women. And of course, at the moment, the women in social justice centers are organizing women in informal settlements within the social justice movement to politicize them, because women have also been as a result of domestication of the struggles of women, is that women have also become quite depoliticized. And of course, taking that position to politicize the struggles of women and take them up from domestic struggles to political struggles. So of course, when we speak about borrowing from the Kurdish model of organizing with regard to the women, is that there's also the particular question of raising the consciousness of women away from domination of men, and also particularly around because right now we have constitutional question of, for example, the two-thirds, fighting for two-thirds representation, particularly with regard to politics, because women have also not particularly participated in terms of politics. So of course there's also the struggle to have women for. Are they saying how my internet has crashed or what? No. Okay.
No, I can still hear you.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you. Of course, I was saying that there's also the struggle to have women participate in political positions, so that they can also have an opportunity to address, the question of emancipation of women from, of course, any form of domination. And they're also organizing women in terms of the economic aspect, of course, connecting it to the political question. So there are different ways of organizing. Different ways of organizing around women in peasant areas through what Comrade Gasheke was speaking about, self-help organization and self-help groups that are also coming together to bring women around the question of political questions. And of course, we cannot fail to address what Comrade Alexandra Kolotai was speaking about when she spoke about red carpet feminism, where we have a lot of NGOs or feminist organizations that are also taking women towards the path of red carpet feminism, where they're now talking about emancipation of women in terms of different struggles. Some taking up the parliamentary struggles, and some taking up different positions of power, or in terms of different positions of economic positions. And of course, that has no particular effect or response to women in the grassroots. So there's also that aspect of raising their consciousness to understand that there's a particular connection between glass ceiling and, of course, the rock ceiling, where the grass women are not affected by the positions that women in women in the glass, women who are able to break the glass ceiling, and of course organizing around issues of poverty and need, which Comrade Emma says we are not supposed to be ashamed of. But also particular states of struggle, because women in the grassroots have no connection to issues, because for example, when we speak about issues of social justice, what affects the women in the grassroots is not similar to the struggles that affect the women in these particular positions of the glass ceiling, breaking the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's very interesting what you were saying, because often even the way feminist struggles are framed, whether sort of more Western neoliberal forms of feminism, has this clear separation between women's struggles for their rights and women's struggles for the rights of their community. Do you want to add anything in relation to that, or do we move on to the next question? Our last question before we start closing was, can you tell us more about the social justice centers? What kind of work they do, what are they like, how are they connected both to one another and to the broader strategy?
I think the ideological underpinning of the social justice centers is just as Howard Zinn put it, that that we are all inspired by that culture of hopelessness. And if you look at the Kenyan struggle very closely, you find that Kenya is attacked by all forces of imperialism, and Kenya particularly is a carpet of imperialist, is a carpet of imperialist football. So you get that, and most of our population are not so conversant with the different ideologies that we are aligned to, but at least they can relate with the question of housing, they can relate with the question of food, they can relate with the question of employment, the question of dignity. So because majority of the population are not informed about these processes. So we think that it is an organ or a platform that can bring all these people, the advanced strata and the backward strata to a reasoning point. And after reasoning about the immediate needs, then they can start working on them. So that is the ideological underpinning, but Gasheke can expound more about the organizational outlook.
Thank you very much. And this is a very fundamental question. As you know, the history of Kenya, we had a dictatorship, a crisis of economy. We come from the path of human rights movements, a liberal democratic transition. Social justice was an idea to spark a conversation from below that is not more limited to only civil and political liberties. It's an idea to ask, why do we have this inherent political violence or an economy that inherently violent? So the starting of Madara Social Justice Center was creating a path of building a social movement or a social justice movement that will think a broader question of political economy, ecological crisis. So Madara Social Justice Center was formed in 2015, and from there many other centers were formed. Now in Nairobi, we have 21 social justice center, which form a social justice center working group. We meet every Tuesday, every twice in 2 weeks, where we discuss about different campaigns, like campaign on sexual and gender-based violence, campaign on extrajudicial killing, campaign on ecological justice, campaign on the right to life, campaign on art for social change. So this is how we are organized, and then it's building a mass-based urban movement that has been able to tilt to be able to amplify the voices against state violence. And then from there, there are social justice centers that are forming outside the city, in the rural areas and in the coast side of the city. So we have a collective leadership that's shaping up, but we still have many limitations and challenges because we continue to struggle with the issues of NGOization. And as you know, organizing with a human rights theory is also limited. That's why we're increasing on a more political education. And the idea of the economic solidarity economy is a very powerful idea because it starts conversation on how do you create a sustainable economy. Yeah, and I think we'll share more details and about how the social justice movement is organized, and it's spread across the country. But every center is autonomous. Like Madara Social Justice Center is autonomous, Kasarani is autonomous, Kidura is autonomous. They can create their own path and their economic path. So I think this is how we organize, and it creates a base, path-based launch, a radical path for reclaiming our humanity and dignity.
Addition that these social justice centers are founded and are found within the informal settlements, where where the workers are found, the less privileged, and of course majority of the poor people.
Thank you. So it's coming to the end of the webinar. I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks, anything you wanted to say before we close.
Just really appreciate this, and also it was a bit powerful linking up with Comrade Jeff and you people. Let's build on this, the powerful platform, and we keep on this, creating a new path for international solidarity and learn from each other. I think it will inspire more movements building and creating a path for rethinking about a better future for all of us as the crisis of capitalism continues.
Yeah, we are actually very honored that for participating in this seminar. I think thanks to the solidarity economy, for also the challenges, for also challenging our organization against colonialization and NGOism, and of course triggering a discussion around this particular matter in this platform. So thank you very much, and also thanks to the participants like Emma and Dan, who asked asked fundamental questions.
Yes, and of course, we've enjoyed very much having this particular conversation because, like we started by mentioning, it's a form of education in itself. So we're very honored to continue. Yes.
Hopefully, to many more to come.
Thank you, Riva.
So just a few closing things. The link to support Grassroots Liberation through their fundraising is has been copied in the chat. So please go check it out. Also, as I said earlier, this is a series of 6 webinars across continents with people building solidarity economy. So we'll be having we won't have one in December, but yeah, so the first one was Cooperation Jackson, who are in the US building autonomy through land and Black liberation in Mississippi. The second one was Abariya Jin, so the women's economy in Rojava, Kurdistan. The third one is the one we've had today with Grassroots Liberation in Kenya. Our next one will not be in December, but in January, and it will be with Samin Prapti Sangharsh Committee, who are Dalit landless farmers mobilizing for land and autonomy. And the one after that will be with Guerrilla Translation, who are a cooperative of activist translators. And we will have a sixth one that you can keep an eye out for, which will be with women in Latin America. So yeah, we hope to see you all in the next ones, and hope that we can continue these forms of just sharing knowledge, experience, strategies, and just learning from each other. Thank you so much, comrades from Grassroots Liberation. It was an honor speaking to you today. And yeah, thank you to participants and to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.